In the spring of 2001, a 30-year-old bookstore chain handed its entire online business to its biggest future competitor. Not under duress, not in a moment of crisis, voluntarily, for a cut of the revenue. The executives who signed that deal believed they were making a smart, efficient decision. They were right about the efficiency. They were catastrophically wrong about everything else. Borders Group had 1,249 stores at its peak, over 19,000 employees, nearly $4 billion in annual sales. It was, by any measure, a cultural institution, the kind of place where people spent entire Saturday afternoons nursing a coffee in a ceramic mug, stacking hardcovers on the floor beside their chair while jazz played softly overhead. The smell of fresh paper and roasted espresso, the low hum of a store full of people who had chosen, deliberately, to slow down. And then, in August 2011, it was gone. Liquidated. Every shelf cleared. Every store dark. Yellow signs plastered across plate glass windows advertising 40% off on items the company could no longer afford to keep. The whole thing dissolved in a bankruptcy that left 10,700 people without jobs and creditors holding over $1 billion in unpaid debt. But here's what most people get wrong about Borders. This wasn't a story about Amazon killing a bookstore. It was a story about a bookstore handing Amazon the weapon, then standing perfectly still while the blade swung. Two completely different narratives. One lets Borders off the hook, the other doesn't. The real question isn't why Borders failed. The real question is how a company this smart, this well-funded, this deeply embedded in American reading culture made the single most self-destructive deal in retail history, and then spent a decade pretending it hadn't. How do you outsource your own future to a competitor? Watch that competitor grow into the most powerful retailer on earth and still not change course.
That question doesn't have a simple answer, but it does have a beginning. To understand what happened, you have to go back to Ann Arbor, Michigan, 1971. A college town in the shadow of the University of Michigan, where used paperbacks sell for 50 cents on card tables outside dormitory windows, and the bookstores near campus smell like dust, binding glue, and old coffee. Two brothers, Tom and Louis Borders, open a small used bookshop on East Liberty Street. The store is modest, a few hundred square feet, dense shelves, the kind of place where you have to turn sideways to pass another customer in the aisle. But the inventory system is something genuinely unusual for the era. Tom Borders is building a hand-coded database that tracks exactly which books sell, in what quantities, at what time of year, and to what kind of customer. This is 1971. Most independent bookstores are running on instinct, gut feel, and the personal taste of whoever owns the shop. Borders is running on numbers. That proprietary inventory system becomes the company's foundational competitive edge. It allows Borders to stock books that other stores miss entirely, regional titles, mid-list fiction, academic texts that a generalist buyer would overlook. It minimizes returns, reduces waste, and creates a selection that feels almost uncannily right for each local market. Customers notice. Word spreads. The store that always seems to have exactly the book you didn't know you were looking for. In every meaningful sense, Tom Borders is building the original algorithm of the American book business, 2 decades before anyone uses the word algorithm in a retail context. By the 1980s, the model is working well enough to attract serious outside attention. The stores are growing. The data system is getting sharper. Kmart acquires Borders in 1992 for $125 million, a number that, at the time, feels like validation of everything Tom Borders built.
The acquisition brings capital, scale, and a national expansion strategy with real teeth. New stores open across the country. Big ones, sometimes 25,000 square feet or more, anchored by in-store cafes serving Starbucks coffee, music departments stocked with CDs and listening stations, and children's sections with low shelves and reading corners designed for small bodies. Each location carries 100,000 titles or more. Walking into a Borders in 1995 is a genuinely overwhelming experience in the best possible way. The kind of retail environment that makes you want to cancel your afternoon plans. Barnes & Noble is doing the same thing simultaneously, and together the two chains are fundamentally reshaping American consumer culture, pulling readers away from small independents and mall chains like Walden Books and B. Dalton alike. The Superstore bookshop is a cultural phenomenon. By the mid-1990s, Borders Group spins off from Kmart and goes public on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker BGP. The stock climbs. Analysts are bullish. The future looks vast and readable. But the late 1990s bring a new kind of noise, and it is getting louder by the quarter. Jeff Bezos launches Amazon.com in July 1995 out of a converted garage in Bellevue, Washington. The garage is not metaphorical. It is a real two-car garage with an extension cord running to a space heater and a door propped on sawhorses as a desk. In Amazon's first month of operation, the site ships books to customers in all 50 states and 45 countries. Within 2 years, Amazon has over 1 million customer accounts. By 1997, it goes public at $18 a share. By the peak of the dot-com bubble in 1999, the stock hits $113. The model is ruthless in its simplicity. No physical stores, no rent to pay on 25,000 square feet of retail space, no cafe overhead, no music department, no children's reading corner, and an inventory that theoretically never runs out because it is drop-shipped from publishers and distributors on demand. Wall Street has decided that the future of retail belongs to whoever can move fastest on the internet, and it is pricing that conviction accordingly. Borders is watching. It is discussing. It is debating in conference rooms in Ann Arbor with consultants and financial advisors and technology vendors the question that every major retailer is wrestling with in the year 2000. Do we build our own e-commerce infrastructure, or do we find another way? Building is expensive. The software engineering talent required is scarce and costly. The logistics infrastructure, warehouses, fulfillment systems, last-mile delivery, requires capital investment that a company focused on physical retail expansion doesn't have sitting idle. The internal argument for outsourcing is coherent, even reasonable on its face. We are a bookseller, not a technology company. Let someone who knows the technology handle the technology. And so, in 2001, Borders signs the deal. Amazon will operate Borders.com. Amazon will process every order placed on that site, handle the shipping, manage customer service inquiries, and fulfill returns. Borders will receive a percentage of each sale, a clean revenue share, no overhead, no technical headaches. From a pure cost center perspective, it looks like a win. It looks like exactly the kind of capital-efficient decision that business school professors spend semesters praising. What Borders does not receive is the customer data. Not the email addresses of the people clicking through Borders.com. Not the purchase histories that reveal which customers buy 3 books a month versus 1 a year. Not the browsing behavior, the abandoned carts, the product pages visited at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, the searches that return no results and reveal a gap in the market. Not the zip code clusters showing where demand for specific genres is growing. All of it flows directly to Amazon servers in Seattle. Every transaction on Borders.com is, in effect, a gift to Amazon's machine learning systems. A data point that helps Amazon understand the American reader more precisely than anyone ever has. Every time a loyal Borders customer buys a novel online, Amazon learns something. It learns what genre they prefer, what price point they'll accept without hesitation, what day of the week they shop, how many items they browse before they commit. Amazon is assembling the most detailed map of American reading behavior ever built, and Borders is the one handing it the surveying equipment. For 4 years, from 2001 to 2007, this information flows in one direction only. When Borders finally terminates the Amazon partnership in 2007 and attempts to launch an independent e-commerce presence under its own domain, the competitive landscape has changed beyond recognition. Borders is not launching a website to compete with a scrappy Seattle startup anymore. It is launching a website to compete with a company that spent 6 years studying Borders' own customers, in many cases understanding their behavior more deeply than Borders itself ever bothered to. The customer relationship that Borders' physical stores spent decades building has been quietly rerouted. The loyalty now lives in Amazon's database, and that is only one layer of the catastrophe. Because while the Amazon deal is running in the background, Borders is simultaneously executing a physical expansion strategy that assumes the printed book market will grow indefinitely, and that large format stores and premium retail locations are a durable competitive advantage. Between 2003 and 2007, the company signs long-term leases on scores of new locations. 10-year and 15-year commitments on stores in high-traffic suburban markets, lifestyle centers, and urban corridors where the rent runs into the millions per year before a single employee clocks in. The real estate portfolio becomes a fixed cost structure of breathtaking rigidity. You can close a website overnight. You cannot close a store without paying out a lease. By 2007, Borders is operating more than 1,000 Borders-branded superstores and over 600 Walden Books mall locations. The total footprint is enormous, the overhead is staggering, and 2 events hit in the same calendar year that change everything. In November 2007, Amazon introduces the Kindle. The device sells out within 5.5 hours of its launch. At $399, it is not cheap, but the customers buying it are not price-sensitive. They are heavy readers, exactly the demographic that has been Borders' most valuable customer segment for 30 years. Within 12 months, the e-reader market begins reshaping the economics of book publishing in ways that no one in the physical retail industry can fully absorb fast enough. The product that every one of Borders' leases, employees, and shelving units exists to sell, the physical printed bound book, now has a competitor that fits in a coat pocket and delivers any title in 60 seconds. In the same year, the American economy begins the slow-motion collapse that becomes the 2008 financial crisis. Consumer discretionary spending contracts sharply. Books are not groceries. In a recession, a $26 hardcover is one of the easier expenses to cut. Foot traffic in Borders stores drops. Holiday sales, the quarter that carries the whole year for a bookseller, come in soft. And the debt load from years of aggressive physical expansion leaves almost no room to maneuver. Barnes & Noble, watching the same landscape, launches the Nook e-reader in 2009. It is not a perfect product. The interface is clunky, the ecosystem thin. But it is a statement of strategic intent. We understand that the future of reading is digital, and we are planting a flag. Borders does not launch a competing device. The financial position by this point makes major capital investment in consumer electronics essentially impossible. The leases are signed. The stores are open. The overhead machine runs every single day, whether revenue is coming in or not. And the revenue line is beginning to slope downward in a way that no holiday promotion can reverse. Inside Borders headquarters in Ann Arbor, the same city where Tom Borders first built his data-driven inventory system in a small shop on East Liberty Street, the internal debates are increasingly desperate. Multiple CEOs cycle through in rapid succession. Greg Josefowitz, who presided over the Amazon deal and the expansion strategy, exits in 2006, replaced by George Jones. Jones is a retail veteran who inherits a company already deep in the red, already years behind on digital strategy, already locked into a physical footprint designed for a market that is contracting. He attempts to rationalize the store base by closing underperformers. He negotiates harder with publishers for better margin terms. He doubles down on the in-store experience, the cafes, the events programming, the author readings, the argument that a physical bookstore offers something a screen categorically cannot. Atmosphere, serendipity, the specific pleasure of running your finger along a shelf and stopping on a spine you'd never have searched for deliberately. The logic is not wrong. The timing is fatal. By 2009, the financial statements tell a story that has no optimistic reading. Borders reports a net loss of $186.7 million for the fiscal year. In 2010, losses continue to compound. Publishers, the suppliers on whom the entire business depends, begin tightening credit terms, demanding faster payment cycles from a company that is visibly running short on liquidity. When your suppliers stop extending trust, inventory becomes an existential problem. You cannot sell books you cannot afford to stock. You cannot attract customers to shelves that are growing visibly thin. You cannot compete on selection. The one thing Borders was always supposed to do better than anyone, when the back half of every section is empty. In January 2011, Borders misses payments to publishers. The amounts are significant, tens of millions of dollars in outstanding obligations to Penguin, Simon & Schuster, Hachette, and other major houses. The publishers respond by shifting to cash in advance or cash on delivery terms. The credit that had quietly underwritten Borders' inventory for decades is revoked. On February 16, 2011, Borders files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in a federal court in New York, listing $1.29 billion in assets against $1.29 billion in liabilities. A company that once had nearly $4 billion in annual revenue has, by this accounting, a net worth of approximately zero. It announces the immediate closure of 226 stores. The remaining locations continue trading under bankruptcy protection, while the company's advisors search for a buyer willing to take on the rump operation. The search runs through spring and into summer. Private equity firms look at the numbers. Strategic buyers make preliminary inquiries. None of them can make the math work. The lease obligations alone are enough to make even distressed asset specialists walk away. In July 2011, Borders announces total liquidation. The going out of business sales begin, and for anyone who grew up with these stores, the sight is genuinely mournful. The yellow discount signs in the window, the stripped shelves, the bargain bins in the center of the floor where the feature tables used to be. The employees quietly working their final shifts in a company that had already decided to stop existing. By September 2011, the last Borders store closes. 40 years after Tom and Louis Borders opened a small used bookshop near a Michigan university, on the radical idea that data could tell you what people wanted to read, the whole enterprise is dark. What lingers, beyond the timeline and the balance sheets, is the particular cruelty of the irony at the center of this story. Tom Borders built his company in 1971 on an insight that was genuinely decades ahead of its time. That knowing your customer, tracking their behavior, and using that information to make smarter decisions could create a competitive advantage that no one without the same data could easily replicate. That insight was correct. It was so correct that when Amazon arrived and applied the same principle at global scale with 21st century technology, Borders didn't recognize the echo of its own founding principle staring back at it. It saw a logistics headache to be outsourced. It saw a cost center to be eliminated. It did not see a mirror. The Borders story is not ultimately about the death of print or Amazon's aggression or a single bad CEO. All of those factors are real. But the deeper pattern, the one worth carrying, is this. The companies most likely to destroy you are the ones that learned everything they know from watching you. Borders invented the data-driven bookseller. It just stopped being one at the exact moment it mattered most. If you've ever watched something you loved disappear, not with a crash, but with a liquidation sale and yellow discount signs on a Tuesday afternoon, subscribe. Every week we open another case file.